to get someone to read something, to get someone to order something, you've really got to kind of give them a problem that you can solve. Even if the problem is not having the thing that you've got for them, or the problem is not earning enough money, you've really got to do that right up front, or there's no reason for them really to read, because there's plenty of places people can find benefits.
You hear all the bull about marketing every day. Make your money in your sleep. My new offer is crushing it. My guru could beat up your guru. It's time to go right to the source and get the truth about marketing. With your host, the founder of copychief.com, Kevin Rogers.
Hey everyone, welcome back to The Truth About Marketing. It's Kevin Rogers here. Thanks for joining me for another hot episode where we go deep with the real deal marketers and copywriters and business owners who actually make a lot of money with their advertising. Get beyond the hype to the real story about how it all goes down. Thrilled to welcome my guest today, a longtime, proud to say, a friend and colleague, my man, David Deutsch. How you doing, David?
I'm doing great, Kevin. It's great to be here with you.
I appreciate you being on. I know you're a busy man. You've had a legendary career. Take us through some of the highlights. You actually worked originally in agencies, is that right?
Yeah. That was my first job in advertising, was at Ogilvy and Mather. And it was kind of like working in a teaching hospital. You know, Ogilvy was always into writing books and teaching. So it was very much a learning environment, and just, and such a great place to start. Especially it was a great place to go into direct response afterwards, because, Ogilvy called direct mail his, first love and secret weapon.
Yeah. And so when you hired it, you started right in direct response. Even
I actually started in the typing center and worked my way out of there.
Is that right?
Wow. I really hadn't even considered a career in advertising.
No kidding. So had you gone to college? Did you have a degree to get that typing gig?
Yes, I had a degree in music and in English.
Interesting. Wow. And so were you just looking for any gig and ended up there, or?
Yeah, pretty much. I think I was doing, I think it was temporary work.
Wow.
And they said, "Oh, here, we got a spot for you, it's this ad agency." And I thought, "Oh, ad agency, that's, vaguely interesting." And, I said, well, as long as I'm here,
see what they're sending out around here. Yeah.
See what they're sending out around here and see what I could do. And,
No kidding. So what was the moment where you went, wait a minute, maybe I could do this?
I don't know if there was a moment so much as it seemed like fun.
Mm-hmm.
To be writing commercials and, I don't know what possessed me to get into long copy, because it was so nice to just write a 1-minute commercial or,
right.
Like a page ad, but it's not much copy. It's mostly pictures and things.
Right.
But yeah, it seemed like it would be fun to do. And, it was. I had a great time.
Did you do more agency style work for them? More visually driven stuff?
Yeah, of course. It was more, print and stuff, although the department I worked in also did a lot of what they called collateral type things.
Yeah.
So we did everything from, trade materials to direct response, which was my first exposure to that. We did a guidebook to Bermuda, which was a lot of fun.
Did you have to go to Bermuda for?
I did have to go to
Bermuda. Did you really? For actual research? Get some sand in your toes?
I did.
Very cool.
There was a great lesson there too. With the guy that was running it said, when you go to these hotels and places, he said, look for the grandfather clock in the foyer. In other words, find some detail about each place. Don't just write general stuff about it.
In journalism, they say, get the name of the dog.
Oh, there you go.
I like that. Yeah, what my moment was the first time I went, wow, that looks like the greatest job ever, was a movie with Tom Hanks and Jackie Gleason called Nothing in Common.
Oh, I remember that.
Remember that movie? And,
yeah.
And Hanks was like the creative director at some agency. And they, I thought, wow, just sit up, and throw pencils at the ceiling, brainstorming all day. That seems like a great gig. I could do that. And then, I took a college course of all things in copywriting. Can you believe that there's even a thing, right?
Yeah. Huh?
And it was hilarious because it was much more agency, style work, but I loved it. I loved the assignments. And, I don't know. It seems like you can't freelance quite as well in that world as you can the way we're used to it.
Yeah, it is. It is a lot easier with what we do.
Yeah. So you are a direct response copywriter. You work primarily now, you're known as one of the, legendary copywriters in our business, having the most controls with several agencies. What is your claim to fame with Boardroom, for instance?
Well, there was a point where I had like 6+ controls in the mail at one time.
Wow. Incredible.
So
At one time.
there are people that have more controls than I do. I'm not sure anyone had quite so many in the mail at one time. So
That's exciting. And so is it, and just so anybody's listening to understand, a control ad means the ad that's currently earning the most money, when it's sent out. We're talking about mail ads and letters that go out to people's homes and collect orders. And every publisher's always trying to knock off the control ad. So they're hiring other writers to try to beat the control ad. And so, David, when you're walking around with 6 controls, is that just like make 6 times the paranoia that they're going to go away? Or is it, can you actually sit back and go, I'm going to take a day off. I'm going to walk in the park.
Yeah, you can sit back. You can sit back a little with Boardroom too is great about, not, testing something against you like instantly.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? They'll let your control breathe for a while it's fresh. And, they'll make an effort to start knocking it out, knocking it down in a year or two, but they have to, because that's how you make money, is not to let anything get tired.
Right,
they'll also let you test against your own control, which is great. Do new covers.
Was that something you preferred? It's like, okay, because, you've done the work, the research, all the pain and agony of getting the control ad made. And now it's just kind of easier to come up with a new headline in the shower or something. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. And, the headline and the lead is a good part of what makes an ad successful.
Right. Okay, cool. So again, thanks for being on, man. Always love our time together. You're one of the people that I kind of pinch myself to call a friend, and you've given me a lot of amazing advice, personally and professionally. So I really appreciate that. And I'd love to hear, David, because you've been at this decades now, but you're also a guy who's really hip and on top of who the new people are and what they're doing and how sales funnels work online. What are the things that you see working best and the most broken in advertising today?
Oh God, that's quite a range of a question. Things that are working are different kinds of funnels. For instance, Ryan Levesque's
Never heard of it.
Survey funnel.
Yes, Ryan Levesque, who wrote.
I thought you were serious for a second. I thought, okay, how am I going to handle this?
He wrote the book Ask, and he's just on fire. Had an amazing. He was the it man, the it boy of 2015. Predict very nothing. I don't think we'll even hear from him in 2016. But no, I'm kidding. The guy's amazing, and he brings a very scientific approach to advertising, but he's also a very creative guy.
Yeah, he really does. And I think that comes from his background as a neuroscientist. And,
right.
As a quant, I don't know if he was a quant per se in the investment world, but he certainly was in the investment world and knows numbers. And
right.
He's kind of taken those 2 skills and applied them to marketing in a very brilliant way.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, very cool guy. And so, and he has the survey funnel. Is that something you've been a part of implementing?
Yeah. He and I work together on a project, which is, going great guns right now. And, so I've seen how powerful it is,
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not going to tell him you called him a quant.
Okay. I like throwing around that word. I like saying quant,
And what is one thing that you see, like a mistake, over and over, and you just want to go, oh, how can this still be happening, decades later?
I think there's 2 things with a lot of the writers that I coach and work with. One is just not making the copy be interesting, just putting words on the page.
Right.
And, it's an easy thing to do. I do that myself if I'm not careful, because I just want to get this done. I want to get this written.
Right.
And, but you've got to be able to then look at your copy and read it as if you didn't write it. Read it as if you're the reader, the prospect.
Right.
And look at it and say, this just isn't interesting, because it's not a magazine article. People aren't going to read it just because it's there. You've got to really pull them into it. and you've got to be, singing and dancing and waving, benefits in their face and promises and scaring them and angering them and doing all sorts and fascinating them
So
to get them in and keep them there. And you just see writers that just don't make that effort. It's not like, a lot of writing, I think, is just ruthlessness. I think it's ruthlessness with yourself in terms of putting the time and energy into something. And it's ruthlessness with saying, this isn't good enough.
Yeah. That is true. That is the standard that a lot of people don't uphold. And if you think about the greats, yourself, Clayton Makepeace, John Carlton, Gary Bencivenga, certainly Gary Halbert, there was that relentlessness with high quality. There's famous stories of Halbert reading his ads to drunks in a bar.
Yeah, exactly.
And if they said, wow, that's a really well written ad, he'd throw it in the garbage. The only acceptable answer was, where do I get one of those?
Yeah, I mean, I see people that write copy and they haven't shown it to their wife. They haven't shown it to anyone.
Right.
You don't need me to tell you it's boring. Show it to someone. They'll tell you it's boring,
Right.
So there's that. And, then there's also what I find a lot of people do is just pile on benefits.
Mm-hmm.
They just feel like if they can pile on enough benefits, then they're going to, this scale that they've got in their mind is going to tip and the prospect will buy.
Right.
And
bombard them. Yeah.
Yeah. And they just leave. They just don't realize that the more you pile on benefits, the more there's resistance, the more there's need for proof. I mean, you can tell someone I can make you $10 million, but if you prove to them that you can make them $1,000, they'll pay $49 for your product.
Right.
So it's not, it's the amount, there's always that balance between proof and promise. And some people don't realize if you really dial down the promise, you can dial up the proof a little bit if you've got something very powerful.
But then my instinct would be, well, if I dial down the promise, is it going to then fall into that boring category?
Well, boring is a little bit different. Boring is more just keeping someone's interest because you're entertaining them. You're provoking their curiosity.
Right.
I mean, certainly there's an element of, it's a little bit like, using the word sex. Sure, you can use the prospect of making $1 million to get someone's attention.
Right.
But then you've also got skepticism and some other things, coming in there.
That's interesting. Can you? I'll put you on the spot, and if you can't come up with it, that's fine. We can edit this out or something. but can you come up with an example of a time where you faced that scenario where you said, there's just too much promise here, and I got to back that down, and then kind of would that mean changing the headline, changing the lead? At what point do you make that shift in the copy?
Well, it could be anywhere, but the most important place is up front. A lot of times in investment, claiming $1 million, making $1 million becomes unbelievable because there's so much stuff out there. So it becomes more of a challenge to break it down a little bit and say things like you can make $300, $500, extra $500 a week.
Right.
So while everyone else is saying, make this stock, it's going to go to the moon and you're going to make this, to be able to say you can increase your income by, $500 a week, with this investing plan or something like that.
Right.
All of a sudden, that kind of seems doable and reasonable.
Right. Yeah. I've been a part of ads where, I've actually, I don't say dumbed down, but fractioned off the actual result so it feels more tangible.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it too, is what you call fractioning off.
Yeah, you can do the math a lot of ways. And like you said, $500 every other week or whatever sounds like, I can actually see that coming. I can see that number. Or if you're talking about, $1,200,648, people are going, no, I've never seen $1 million. I don't know what that's not me.
Yeah.
That's for other people.
If you break down really a great promotion, like End of America, say, and you really look at that, it's like the whole thing is just proof.
Yeah.
It's just like proof after proof after proof. And there's not a lot of claims in there either. So he never says, oh, you're going to make so much money. He just says, look, there's, some bad things are going to happen. You got an opportunity to protect yourself and your family from these bad things. economically.
Mhm.
And, I can show you how to make some money at the same time.
Mhm.
I mean, doesn't it make sense that if you know this is coming, you can make some money? He never says you make a killing. He never says, I don't think he ever even promises specific returns.
Yeah, interesting.
It's all very reasonable.
Right, right. Yeah, so it kind of comes down to problem solution ultimately.
It does. It does. And, that's something, as you know, that I've been looking at
Mhm.
lately, just again, in trying to figure out what's a shortcut to getting people to write better. What's a shortcut to getting, because I'm very lazy. I don't like to write. I don't like to do a lot of work. I like to find things that I can change in someone's promotions, in someone's copy that's going to have a huge impact.
Mhm.
And one of the things I find a lot of times is that there is no problem solution.
In the ad.
Mhm. Especially up front.
Mm.
So it's kind of like, we hear that, it's one of the first things we learn, the problem solution approach. You got to have a
Right.
problem, you got to, make it worse, and then you got to solve it. And yet you look at advertising sometimes, you look at some things that people write or some things that companies use to promote their products and themselves, and there really is no problem. You really haven't left me with enough of because really, to get someone to read something, to get someone to order something, you've really got to kind of give them a problem
Yeah.
that you can solve.
You want them squirming, right? Just like, oh God, please. Okay. You're so in the pain of it that they're just begging you to please come with the solution.
Yeah. And, even if the problem is not having the thing that you've got for them, or the problem is, not earning enough money,
Mm-hmm.
you've really got to do that right up front, or there's no reason for them really to read, because there's plenty of places people can find benefits.
Yeah, right.
There's plenty of places people can find benefits of how much money they can make or what good health they can get. But if instead you can convince them of, End of America is a great example too, because, it's not quite as gloom and doomy as it sounds.
Right.
It's really just a very attention-getting way of saying, hey, the dollar is going to lose its, preeminence in world markets. And that's got some tremendous implications for you and your portfolio. Well, now I've got a problem. This is going to happen and I'm not prepared for it.
Right.
Which turned out to be a far more powerful thing than promises of how much money you can make on the next killer stock.
Yeah, it's a great point.
So I was going to say, it's the same thing with a lot of health stuff.
Yeah.
You can promise relief from pain and relief from this and all sorts of wonderful things. But if you convince someone that they've got some toxins in their body that are newly discovered, or if you convince someone that that there's something they're doing now that they're doing wrong, then they've got a problem.
Right.
And that's the basis of a lot of successful packages, have been that kind of, presentation, like that wonderful package that Paris Lampropoulos of the, what was it? I think Marcella Allison was the writer with him on it. If you were born between these years, between 1952 and 1980, you've been exposed to a toxin which was commonly in use at the time, which could be affecting your health in blah, blah, blah ways. I mean, that was like almost the copy on the envelope.
Right.
And that was so powerful because you were born in those years. Now you had a problem.
Right. And it gets curiosity in there. How can you not at least look to see what it is?
Yeah. And instead of being one more detox package of some pill that helps you detox, it was a powerful problem they had to solve. And it was tremendously successful because of that.
See, now you bring up something really interesting about specifics, right? And as you were talking about the problem of there often not being a problem presented, I'm thinking, I think a lot of people who might know better avoid being specific about the problem and agitating that pain because they don't want to turn away someone who might not have that exact problem, right? So they lean more general in their descriptions of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And do you think that might be part of the reason people do that?
Yeah, I think in general, people aren't gutsy enough, when it comes to that. And it's I sympathize. It's a hard thing to do.
Yeah.
To write off to think like you're writing off part of a market.
Yeah.
Because in reality, you don't. In reality, you attract other people anyway.
Right.
But to really write, writing specifically to an avatar
right.
is kind of like that. I want to write to this woman with this problem.
Yeah, it's like
It's
in saying that about Paris's headline, that is a pretty wide range of years, but you're being really specific. You're going, if you were born in 1979 or whatever year on each side of that, you're going,
yeah,
forget it, toss it in
yeah.
the
You got to
trash.
write off some people that were born before then or after them.
Yeah,
But very powerful. Drugs no senior should ever take was a
yeah,
very powerful headline for Boardroom that Lee Euler wrote. And you could say, oh, I don't know if I should say no senior, because then what about all the people who aren't seniors? It's not package not going to be successful because we won't attract them.
right. But that's the thing, is like you have to speak as powerfully as you can to your avatar. And so that you do the research to find out, who is this really for? Who can we help the most? Who is this created to help the most? And then how do we reach that demographic, and then go all out to make sure that they understand the problem, feel the problem, and really need the solution.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's a mathematical thing too, to some extent.
Yeah.
It's that idea of you can get 1% of a million people to buy, or you can get, maybe 20% of 100,000 people,
Right.
and the 20% is twice as much of 100,000 is, I think, I don't know, my math is off, I'm sure, by a zero somewhere, but
You're no
it's
quant.
it's twice as much as 1% of, a million.
Right.
And so why not do that? Why not take 20% of 100,000?
Right. And
Or 30% of 10,000, or, well, you can't do 300%, can you? Okay, the math falls apart at a certain point. But you know what I'm saying.
I do.
Ultimately, you want 100,000, you want 100,000 customers. Doesn't matter whether you get them from a pool of a million or a pool of, less than that.
Right. Right. It's all about being targeted and twisting the knife.
Your message becomes more and more powerful as it, is applicable to less and less people.
Right. Yeah. Good point. Good stuff. All right, David, let's get to the essential question of the show. Now, with so much experience, so many campaigns you've been a part of, I'm fascinated to hear your answer to this question. So, what is the one thing you've done in your marketing that produced the most surprising results?
Okay. Well, the first thing that comes to mind is I'm always surprised by results. I'm always surprised when things work, because by the time you're done with the package, it's like, it's never the package you started out to write, right? You always start out, even if you have a clear idea when you start out of what the package is going to be, somehow it never is that. And it's never as good as you really had planned on it being. So the fact that things work is always, to some extent, astonishing to me.
Right.
Then, of course, I come back in a year or two and I read it again. I go, wow, who wrote this? This is good.
Some genius.
Some genius wrote this.
Can I ever be this good?
Oh. So, results to me are always, to some extent, surprising. But, I think one of the most surprising results was a package that I did. This was a Boardroom package, and it was it had these arteries on the cover, and it was like the first package. A lot of people have kind of taken this since then, but it was the first package that had the before and after of the arteries. So it had the clogged arteries, and it had the unclogged arteries.
Mm-hmm.
And boy, the people at Boardroom were really like, Mike, oh, this is gross. And they were right. It was gross. It was, a sliced open. I mean, it was a nice medical illustration, but still, it was a sliced open, clogged up artery and a sliced open, clean artery. And of course, Boardroom, to their credit, tested it anyway, because they know that it doesn't matter what they like, doesn't matter what I like, doesn't matter, but even what prospect likes, it's what people respond to and send money because of.
Right.
And that was the years and years that those arteries were the control.
Wow. Interesting. And so Boardroom's, one of those companies where you didn't have to fight so hard for stuff. Because I know Brian Kurtz was running the show there with Marty at the time, and he's very much about trusting the copywriter.
Yeah, very much. I mean, Boardroom was just a dream to work with. They treated writers well. They appreciated writers. They paid writers well, and they were smart when it came to direct response.
Mm-hmm.
Marty, Brian, Michelle, and Carmen, just really knew what worked. great editors and, great to bounce ideas off and willing to test things.
Yeah, that is a dream. And what about, give me the other side of that. You don't have to name names, but what was it like, when you felt like you were more in a combative scenario with a publisher?
Yeah, I don't know that I've ever felt combative so much. I'm pretty good at doing things that the client, like if the client wants something, has a certain idea or something, I'm pretty good at, doing it in a way where it works. At a certain point, though, that starts to work against you, where something becomes like a series of compromises. And before you know it, it's kind of gone in a 180-degree direction.
Right.
Or it doesn't have the singularity of purpose that a piece needs to have. My feeling is that, and I've had pieces that have just gotten so off track just because, the client wants to do this, and then so we'll do this, and then they'd like to have this in there. Okay, so I work this in, and before you know it, it's not. See, I think pieces that work, there's a couple of things that I know a piece is going to work. One is when it makes the client nervous.
Yeah.
Then I know, okay, this is going to work. Just like that boardroom thing, right? Made boardroom nervous. So of course, it's going to work. And the other thing is that you can tell someone about it, like a what do you call it? A pitch, a soundbite, back of an envelope.
Right.
It's going to do a program. It's called End of America. It's about how the dollar is, not going to be the premier currency anymore, the implications that that's going to have, and how you need to prepare for that, and how you can also make a whole lot of money from it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then we're going to prove the hell out of that.
That's great. Yeah.
Okay, that's End of America,
That's a great point. Like a log line. Yeah. Like, when you're scrolling through Netflix and you're reading the log lines of what the movie's about,
Right.
Yeah.
And, promotions that aren't good, you can't do that with.
Right.
Like, well, you got to buy the stock because the thing, it's got like this. This is kind of, and it just, and also the best writers are able to give that kind of a pitch when they're about to write.
Right.
They'll say, like you've heard Carlton go on like a rant.
Oh, yeah.
Right. Not just for something he's writing, but you'll tell him what you're working on.
Right.
And he'll go, well, you got to just tell them that they just got to get off the couch and buy, because if they don't, their brother-in-law is going to hate them and their wife is going to leave them. And, he'll just, and I mean, I can't do it that well. It's a very articulate.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Man like that, but he'll just encapsulate the whole thing in this emotionally powerful way.
Yeah.
And I just think that's the, people always like, techniques and tricks for being a good writer. I think a lot of it is mindset. A lot of it is being able to do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I think the writing just comes naturally once you can do that. Once you boil it down like that.
That's a great point. And so, what do you think it's like a chicken and egg thing? So when I coach copywriters, I talk a lot about, yes, great, handwrite ads, do all that stuff, but it's your thinking, what John calls critical think, that you need to develop, right? I mean, that's really everything.
Yeah.
And I think you just sort of encapsulated what he's talking about, that his ability to rant off. I mean, I have literally transcribed a conversation like that with him and put it in an ad that we were working on together and had it kill, But that's years and years and years of thinking. Or, he talks about how Albert used to would do that looping, where he would just obsess on an ad or a topic or a piece of copy. And people would say, I don't know, he's told me the same thing 4 times. And John would go, no, he's looping. He's actually writing right now. That's why he's doing that.
That's great. I didn't realize that was what that was called. I mean, I had read recently and connected it to this about Halbert, just kind of like he had to talk it out.
Yeah. With
people. He'd talk it out with this person and this person and this person. And what do you think of this? And I tell people to do that. Like, go before you write, sell the book you're working on, the product. Like, talk to someone about it.
Yes.
In a way that makes them want it. And if you can't make them want it, you're not ready to write about it.
That's great.
People think, the writing is different. I'll write it in a way that'll make them want it. But you've got to be able to sell it, before you put pen to paper.
That's right. And it's that moment where, as you're describing it, so you're getting excited. You can feel it physically, emotionally, and then you're pulling out facts just and they're flowing. It's again what John calls stalking the desk. Like when you get to that part, sitting and writing isn't hard anymore. It's like, let me at it. You feel like a caged animal. You just want to bust loose and get going.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. And I think that's what a lot of writers miss in their copy. And the problem isn't a copy problem per se. I mean, yeah, you could look at it and you could go, oh, this word is not, well, you need more action verbs, you need this, but really you need to get excited about it. And
Yeah.
you need to talk the ad more than write it.
Yeah, great point. Well, this is good stuff, David. I want to respect your time. I appreciate you being with us. Let me ask one question about your process, if I might. I'm always fascinated with this very idea we're talking about of when, it comes down to a writer being alone in the room, with the empty sheet of paper or the blinking cursor. Are you a guy who gets out the dirty version first? Can you write top to bottom and then go back and edit cold, or are you a fixer as you go?
No, you know what my process is more because I don't like to write in a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
So I realized one day that the solution to that is to spend as little time actually writing as possible. So I'll write like an outline. I'll start to flesh out the outline. I'll start to do little bits here and there. And, I'll think things through and put some more bits, flesh it out a little more. And by the time I'm actually ready to sit down and write, I've pretty much written it already.
Interesting.
But I haven't per se sat down and actually wrote it.
Got it. So your process is just what you said, sort of thinking it through, almost talking it through to yourself or to other people, and just making the writing it's just like a formality at that point.
Right.
Really interesting. Great.
I think another trick too that I use sometimes, and I think would be great for people, so I'll share it if you don't mind.
Yeah, please.
Is it's similar to that in a way, but it's not using the outline structure. It's using a more condensed sell, like a pitch, really. So before you sell it, sit down and write a letter to your mother or someone you care about that sells this. Like, Mom, here's this thing I'm working on. It's this great book. And if you get it, it's going to blah, 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 blah. And, do that in a paragraph or a page, whatever, 2 paragraphs. And then take that and make it a couple of pages. And then take that and make it into a long form sales letter. So that when you've got it now, it's not 30 pages of you trying to find your way. It's a nice terse pitch, which has been expanded to 30 pages.
Right.
And that's very different.
Yeah, exactly right. And you mentioned length. When you say 30 pages, I know you're kind of using numbers at random, but when it comes to long copy, you've heard the rule. It'll be as long as it needs to be to sell the product.
Right.
Is that pretty much the rule you follow?
I don't know that I'd say that exactly. There's a lot of psychological implications for long copy.
Mm-hmm.
I think something can be sold, and this comes down to, when people say, is it better to, begin with a story or not? Is it better to do this or not? Well, short copy can work, I think, for things, and long copy can work for things.
Mm-hmm.
It depends on how it's done. If it's long, there are certain requirements then that it needs to have. If it's short, other requirements. Just like if you begin with a story, there are certain requirements that you have to do to make that work. If you don't begin with a story, well, you should probably have something else that's interesting to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
So there's certain other requirements.
And so what would determine whether you're going to write a long or short ad going in? When you're working with a publisher, do they say, well, we want this to be about a 8 to 12 page letter?
Yeah, well, sometimes the format is predetermined to some extent, like the boardroom. Yeah, like a magalog or something like that. The other aspects, one of the reasons I kind of blanched a little bit when you said long enough to sell it, there's another dimension to that too, which is sometimes there's a certain heuristic that people have, right? That if there's a lot to say about something, it must be more valuable or more valid than if there's not a lot to say about something. So there's a certain reassurance that comes from long copy.
Mm-hmm.
Whether people read it or not, they're like, oh, okay, it's there. There's a lot to say about this thing.
Yeah, and I think health and finance are 2 markets where that's probably pretty predictable.
Right.
Yeah. Have you ever written an ad and said, I think the pitch is complete, but it's just too short? Have you ever done it? I got to go add 20 pages to this, even though it's done.
Yeah, sometimes it's kind of like as I said, it's like, I don't know that this has the critical mass, the heft, the gravitas in terms of volume to really, sell this thing.
Interesting.
And then, of course, you have to be careful you don't pad it. You got to put interesting sidebars and all sorts of fun stuff.
Right. Great stuff.
Or just make the damn type bigger,
That's right. Why is this in 16-point font, David?
Because I ran out of things to say.
That's like the comedian who goes into the crowd. So where are you from? Oh, boy. We're out of material. Red alert.
Yeah.
Well, this has been fun. I really appreciate you doing this for us. You're a legend in the business. You're still very active in the business. I know you're doing a lot more coaching and consulting now. Who's the kind of person who should come seek David Deutsch's, advice or mentoring?
Well, I work in two ways, or the people I work with are two different kinds of people. One is writers, who want to get to that A level, up their game, get the bigger clients, the boardrooms, the information publishers, the people like that.
Mm-hmm.
The other is I work a lot with clients who either have in-house copywriters or outside copywriters, and kind of work with them, work with the writers that they use as kind of an in-house, out-of-house creative director.
Right.
Looking over copy, mentoring the writers, training, improving copy, editing copy, just basically trying to leverage, their existing resources.
Yeah, that's great. I've been privileged to be part of some of those circumstances, and it's just a great thing to hear. We're going to have David look at the copy. Because I mean, as a copywriter, your ego needs to die early in your career.
It's really true,
And to know that, let me preface that by saying the worst thing a client could do to you is run your copy by other copywriters behind your back.
Right.
And then pretend that all their millions of opinions and suggestions are actually theirs. That's uncool. But for a client to say, we're going to go to the best and have them look this over and get their feedback, you're like, oh, yes. I mean, for a writer, it's the best of both worlds. It's like getting your coaching, but on a specific project, right? It just raises the quality for everyone. So I think it's awesome that you're in a place in your business where that's what you're doing, because you're affecting a lot of lives and businesses positively.
Yeah. Well, thanks. I certainly enjoy doing it. It's very gratifying to take something that's not working and make it work.
Yeah, without having to stare down the blinking cursor.
Without having to actually write the thing myself, right?
So davidldeutsch.com. It's DEUTSCH, David Deutsch. Thanks so much for being with us. I hope we can do this again.
Oh, my pleasure. Glad to do it anytime.
Thanks, pal. We'll talk soon. Hey, thanks again for listening to the Truth About Marketing podcast. If you like this show and you think other people would like this show, the best way to spread the word is by reviewing and rating the show in iTunes. Just log in, click review, leave a big old fat 5-star review, and let everybody know that you dig the show so that they can dig it too. To get all the links and resources we mentioned on today's episode, please go to copychief.com/TAM, as in Truth About Marketing. And if you'd like to learn more about how you can improve your sales copy with templates, formulas, coaching, feedback, or hiring a pro, do all that on the inside of the members area of copychief.com, and I will look for you there. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.